Taking it to the back here, you'll see I put this nice U-Trax rear seat. This is really convenient. It allows you to put 2 or 3 kids back here on the farm. I certainly would not use this for off-roading because you do not have the roll bar protection. But if it's just a matter of, going a few miles per hour down the, from one side of the property to the other side of the property, it seems, perfect for that use case, especially, on safe flat land. You've got, seat belts to buckle them in to keep them squirming around. And we have an adult sit there back there with them. The nice thing about it is it's really easy to pop this thing out. So all you have to do is pop these pins right here. It drops these arms. Pull this pin, drops those arms, and then this entire bottom just folds right up. Okay, so even if you're just transporting, boom, now all of a sudden you've got use of your bed, which is really nice. And then this just clips up. So then all of a sudden it's out of the way. And now you've got the full use of your bed. And then you pop these out, 4 more pins, and this entire thing just comes right out of the bed. And then you don't have it. It's just wonderful. So even though I don't use this if I'm going off-roading, if it's just around the farm and you're moving somebody from one side to the other side, it works perfectly. On the back here, you have your tow ball here, and I know I don't do a lot of towing with this, but this works as a great step to get back up here, which is nice. For the bed, I do have the OEM bed. The OEM bed is nice. A lot of people don't realize that you can actually unbuckle these 2 on each side, and it will tip up and dump. Now, it is not assisted, so you have to lift the entire weight of everything back there. But if it's a matter of, trying to clean it out or whatnot, because there's mulch in it, you can get the last bit of mulch out by dumping it up, which is really nice. And it also takes less than, 15, 20 seconds to take the whole thing off if for some reason you want to go back to using the rack, which is also very convenient. All right, one of the things that I did is I had a lot of trouble finding somebody to tell me the best way to mount a license plate. I know a lot of people put the license plates in all these fancy locations, but for me, I found this really convenient place right here. Now, I know people say, hey, why do you cover your license plate? No one cares anymore. But my license plate is right here. And the nice thing about this mounting location is you can actually tilt it up like this and keep it out of the way. So certainly on state land and on trails, you need your license plate there. But if you were to hit, say, for example, a stick or a branch, it will just fold up and keep it from being damaged. You also have a light up here now tied into this light, so it is illuminated. And then if you are not on trail land, or if you want to stash it out of the way for some reason, you can just fold it right up and it stays out of the way. Really convenient, really cheap mount bracket. Works really, really, really well. So I highly recommend that approach. Works out quite well on this unit. Moving around inside, I went with these side mirrors on both sides. And then in the top, I went with this thin mirror. When I purchased this, it actually had this really thick, tall mirror that seems really popular on these units. But my wife, who's like 5'2", 5'3", she hits her head on it. And I can't imagine many people being shorter than 5'2", 5'3", driving these things. So while I'm 6'9" and I drive this Pioneer 500, she's 5'3". We both hit our heads on it. That made no sense. Now that we got this nice narrow one up here, it is perfect for both of us, which is really convenient and gives us a great view out the back. We also have this EMP roof, which works well because it does have these nice rain gutters and is sealed all the way around. So we have these mirrors all the way around. And then in the back here, I have this nice sound bar. This sound bar I really like because it is battery powered on its own. So it can run for a very long time without requiring using the battery power from the vehicle. So if I am stopped, if I'm working on the farm or we're at a park and we are, just hanging out, I can listen to sound here and not worry about drowning the battery. Now, despite the fact that I do have it has a standalone battery on it, you will notice it is still plugged in. I'll get to that in just a moment because I do charge it off of the battery system in the unit. Therefore, I do not have to take it out. However, it works very well because it has its own battery for powering the sound system. It runs off of Bluetooth. Now, before I get into that power system over there, I'll take you down back to the front here, okay? I'm surprised I see a lot of these on the Jeeps. I come from Jeeps before I got into quads, and I'm surprised I don't see a lot of these kind of dashboard units on these UTVs. But I find these very, very handy. So what I have here is I have right in front of me on the steering wheel while I'm driving I call it my dashboard, but I have a compass, so I know the direction I'm going, and then I have both a pitch and roll meter. What this allows me to do is you get very comfortable understanding what your braking points are and comfort points are on pitch and roll. So this allows both for myself and then also when other people are driving my vehicle and they ask, we have very easy to understand what your comfort level is while you're driving and what is a safe level of incline and when you need to start getting nervous. The compass is also incredibly helpful when you're out on these trails because a lot of trails you kind of go down these unmarked, questionably marked areas and you need to make sure you don't lose your bearing. This is, I think compasses are really incredibly important. I know a lot of people, just use your phones, but a lot of places don't have phone coverage. You want to use your offline maps, but again, I think it's nice to have a compass. So I do find this very helpful, and that's what I have here, and it fits, really nicely right in front of the steering wheel. There's nothing else there. So from a driving position, you see it, but you're not blocking anything. You're not blocking your view of the trails. You're not blocking, anything you need to see. So that works quite well. Then right to the side here, I have my phone mount, which works really well for this, what I consider a useless cup holder. Like you can't even put a drink here. You can't access a drink here if you have it here. The net's kind of in the way when you close the door. So if I close the door here, and yes, I am 6'9", and you can see even though I'm 6'9", I still have a little bit of leg room here. So it's fine. So I would say someone 6'9", 6'10", should be able to drive this unit, maybe even 6'11" to 7 foot. Depending on how your torso length is. I also have enough head clearance for a helmet. But this cup holder is it's just not a great cup holder to use anyway. But this works really well for the cell phone mount, and I'm able to sit my cell phone here. It doesn't interact with my EMP windshield, so I can have my cell phone here, both to control music and then also to handle GPS, which works out quite well while I'm driving. And then I still have access to my quote-unquote dashboard right there, which works well. And it does not in any way, shape, or form interfere with my shifters. So that's what I have here. Now I do have automatic mode, but anyone who has got the P500 probably drives more in manual mode anyway. It's more fun. So that's generally what I have going on here. You'll also notice I do have my winch control here. I know a lot of people like to use dash controlled winches, and I'll be honest, I never totally understood that. I do get the appeal of making sure it's reliable through the dash controls, and reliability is always super important to me. So that I do understand. But even if I had dash control, I would want a remote anyway for two reasons. First of all, often it's nice to get the weight out of the UTV. Sometimes you want the weight in the UTV. Sometimes you want the weight out of the UTV. So it gives you that ability. Secondly, sometimes both for safety purposes, and for, just because it's helpful to be able to be outside and see what's going on. It is helpful to not be in the UTV when you are operating the winch. And so for those reasons, I really like the remote control winch setup, and that's what I have going on here. Again, I mentioned that I am 6'9", and yes, you still have very, very good view on this, mirror here, and then you can also see my hair's a little bit of a mess. I apologize, but I got plenty of headroom here on this. So you see plenty of headroom here. Even with the helmet, I still have plenty of room with that sound bar. That's why I went with the smaller sound bar as well, instead of going with one of the larger units that some people are using. I wanted to have plenty of room for the helmets. All right, now I'll get you underneath the seat for a minute. I'm very budget oriented, so you'll see here I went with the, instead of paying a couple $100 for the crazy amount, I went with the use a trash can and melt it down to fit. And then I used magnetic tape, or not magnetic tape, sorry, aluminum tape to assure it does not melt from heat buildup. That fits in there perfectly. And it actually, on the bottom, sits right there on the frame. So it actually has no problem managing the weight that I have inside of there. Now, I know I hate to do this to you and give you a little bit of dizziness, but to take you over to the side of what I have going on over here on the other side, this is my little electrical box. So before I get into electrical, I do make these, and I think this is really handy. I print out the important parts of the manual and laminate it on a sheet of paper. This not only includes the maintenance schedule, but it includes all the important things that I may need in an emergency, like when I'm out in the field. So it gives me, spark plug information, coolant information, brake fluid information, torque specs, dimension information, anything, what kind of coolant, that kind of stuff. We often know this on top of our heads, but then maybe we don't, or someone else has their vehicle. It's always nice for them to have this, or to have this in the vehicle, so you can always grab it real quick. I also I know a lot of people choose to take out their manuals because they don't want to destroy it. But then I sit there and say, oh my gosh, what happens if you get in a bind and you need your manual, right? What if there's no one else around, you need to repair something? And so I instead put mine in a plastic baggie. Therefore, I have it because, again, if you need it, you need it. And if you leave it at home because you're afraid it's going to get damaged, then you can't access it in the trail. And that's a shame. So what I do have in here, though, you'll notice I've got the power distribution block here. So I've got the power line running for the winch. And then everything else that I have got going on here. A lot of people put this under the front, under the hood. I have it going on in the, here instead for a few reasons. Mainly because I've got power distribution, some of it in the front, some of it in the back, which seemed to make a lot of sense to me. And then also it seemed like a good place because I've got a lot of control over, the water ingress and whatnot in this area. So this is where, the control modules, ECU and stuff like that is. So it seemed like a good place for me. It's also close to the battery. And normally you want to keep the shortest distance possible for your electrical. So this ends up being the shortest distance possible to all electrical components. So it works out quite well. You'll also notice here I put another cigarette lighter right here, which works out really well. This right here is a USB adapter. So the thing that's plugged in right now is for the power box, or the sound bar I was mentioning before. And so I just plug this in to charge the sound bar. Then I have another USB port available for a phone or whatnot. So that's what's going on right here. That is not the only extra USB port that I did connect here, however. So I do have another one kind of buried here behind the seats. It's actually a really convenient location if you can see it. It's right here. So it's kind of hard to see, but it's right here, right behind the seats, and it's really easy to grab. And the reason why I like it here, even though it's hard to see, is it's right here between the bed and the seats. What that means is I can power anything that's in the bed, sitting in the bed, anything that needs to be charged in the bed, or things like my spotlight. So if I have people sitting in the bed, if I'm sitting in the bed, or anything like that, you can plug it right there because it's right there in the back of the bed. Really, really, really convenient place to have that, even if it's a non-traditional place, which works out pretty well. There is one that came pre-connected from the manufacturer. It's right here under the dash. But the worst thing is to try to have a wire running from there across your cabin while you're driving or while you're trying to do things. So these are really convenient because they are out of the way and they work really well for whatever use case you may end up needing. I've been incredibly tempted to purchase the glove box that goes here. I have not done it yet, but that is the one thing that's been tempting me still. Everything else I'm feeling pretty confident on, even though there's a few modifications I have not yet finalized the installs on. Now moving to the front. I'll squeeze in some pictures instead of pulling this off real quick, but it's not too hard. Just pull off these snaps. This window comes off, and then you can pull this off, and you'll see that I have a storage box in there. The storage box has all my safety and emergency gear in there. The way that I kind of designed it is what's under the seat is anything that I expect to grab every time I go out. So I do expect to use tow cables. I do expect to use lighting. I expect to use that kind of stuff. Under here is going to be my, emergency stuff. It's going to be, spare spark plugs. It's going to be repair parts. It's going to be repair tools. It's going to be my emergency kits, the tourniquets, Band-Aids, wound kits, extra coolant, zip ties, wipe, all that kind of stuff. That's what I keep in the front. It's kind of a pain in the neck to take this off and to get in here. It's not hard. It takes maybe a minute and a half, but I don't want to do that every time I go anywhere. And so that's what I have going on underneath the hood. That's the way I separate what goes underneath the back seat and what goes on up here. Now, the last thing I'm going to show you all the way up here, there's been a lot of modifications I've thought about, but the last one I ended up choosing to do is going with this winch. Now, I took off this, sorry, not the winch plate, but the, slipped in my mind, sorry. I took that off because I wanted to show you what's going on here. So, I've got a winch in under here. I understand a lot of people swear by the synthetic ones. A lot of people also swear by the top mount version that sits up here. Now, there's a few reasons why I prefer this bottom mount, but I really do like this winch set up here. I think that it is designed really well on this unit with this space down here to squeeze in a winch on the bottom. It's well protected down here. This is probably the best protected part of the entire vehicle. And I didn't like having anything up here. I know some people are saying, hey, it's not a big deal if you have a winch sitting in front of, this radiator. This is plastic. I am less concerned about, the winch blocking airflow. I'm more concerned about things like, the winch cable snapping back and that sort of thing. I also really like how when you have the winch a little bit lower, if you look at where you're oriented here, you're inside the A-arms down here. So you're actually pulling up on the rear wheels. And I know it's only a couple inches, maybe 7 inches difference, but that 7 inches of difference is fairly significant when you're talking about, an ATV like this. 7 inches is like 30% of the height here. And so I really like the idea of pulling up lower because that's going to help get out of bind sometimes. Now, it's easy to say, gosh, that's not that big of a deal. And at the end of the day, it's not. But when you're looking to buy a bracket or mount and you sit there and say, hey, what are the positives and negatives of each? It often comes down to, 1 or 2 small benefits. So again, if you've got a good reason why you want a top mount, say for example, you're using a, 7,000 pound winch, which can't go in the bottom mount because it's too big, then fine, you go with the top mount. That's a good reason why. But if you're going with a smaller unit, like a 3,500 pound, then I like the bottom. But again, you're not necessarily going wrong either way. But just wanted to share my thought process and the reason why I went with what I did. So that's what I've got going on here with the P500 Pioneer. Here's where I mounted the fire extinguisher. So, while it does have its own bracket on there, plastic bracket that snaps to easily remove this, I also added the secondary strap just because when you're on the move. Someone asked me why this is white. It's classification 5BC. That's for automotive and watercraft use, which should be the right classification for using in a vehicle such as this. However, you will often find them red as well, but that is the one that I have here. I should have mentioned I cut 2 pieces of wood that fit right in here inside the bed, which works really well in case I need to haul anything like mulch or similar in the bed, and I don't want it to fall out. I did fail to mention the battery maintainer that I've got set up. So when I was in here running the power distribution block, I also went ahead and connected a battery maintainer. So I've got the battery maintainer dongle that's right here, and that makes it really easy anytime that I'm not out on the trails. I can just simply plug it in right here. Don't have to open up the battery box, and I am good to go to make sure my battery's fully charged for my next time out. So one of the reasons I bought the P500 was to be able to put it in the back of a pickup truck. I know a lot of people, even on my truck forums, question this and say, hey, you really should buy a trailer. But anyway, I don't care what they say. A lot of people with this, this UTV do it for a reason. It's only 1,025 pounds. So there's no reason you can't put this in the back of a truck. I think a lot of people just assume that because it's a UTV, it's got to be huge. It's 50 inches wide. It fits between the wheel well. It's also, as I mentioned, only 1,025 pounds. I have 1,700 pounds payload. So I'm nowhere close to my payload capacity on this truck. Now, the one thing that it does do is, even though I have the 6.5 foot bed, it is going to sit on my tailgate. So I do, there is not an official load rating for these tailgates. While some people will trust these cables, it makes me a little nervous, and I've heard just enough horror stories that I personally am not comfortable with it. And so there's these products out there called the DG Tailgate EX Supports, which, after a little bit of research, I know there's a few solutions. A few people say, hey, put a big old 4x8 down here that you can put it on. But at the end of the day, that ends up being, with wood prices where they're at, it's literally cheaper just to buy these. So, and then I have to put 4x8 in here every time I go anywhere. And then when I'm actually at trails, I can't lock the bed up because there's freaking 4x8 in there. So, what makes the most sense is to use these EX supports, which are pretty rock solid steel. So, I don't think that my tailgate's going to go anywhere with those. So what they do is they pretty easily just snap into place here in your bed, and then they clip up there, and then all of a sudden now you have very strong support for whatever is sitting on your tailgate, and it works in parallel with your current tailgate supports. So that's what I purchased to solve for that problem, which hopefully will, which keeps you safe on the road. And the nice thing is it's so easy to disconnect that when I'm at a park, I can just disconnect it. When I roll my UTV out, I throw those in the bed, and then I also can put my ramps in the bed, and I can lock it up with this tonneau cover, which I use the Backflip MX, which is a nice, solid, hard trifold. I know everyone calls it trifold, but there's actually 4 sections when you have the 6.5 foot bed. So now it's all secure, locked up here, so no one can steal my ramps. And I am secure when I'm at the trails, and I am secure on the road. So a really good setup there with the DG tailgate EX supports. Unfortunately, I found a lot of these providers of these ramps have recently started downsizing the ramp sizes. So you can get by okay with a 50-inch, but I personally found this 84-inch by 54-inch one. And I must say that even though the maximum weight is a little bit lower than some of the others that are 1,700 or 2,200, 1,500 is enough for me and the UTV. And I really like the extended length and the extra couple inches of width here. And so this seems like a wonderful trifold ramp option. But I did notice a number of them that were 54 inches or 52 inches last year. Due to cost of materials, all of a sudden the models that were just updated all of a sudden dropped down to 50 inches, 48 inches, or even 46 inches. And I think that while you can get by with probably 48 inches, when you start getting to 46 inches, your wheels are overhanging in the P500, and that probably doesn't leave you much room for error. So anyway, just wanted to share the one that I was using.